Fhs Season Tickets.
Welcome into another episode of FHS Season Tickets. I'm Michael.
And I'm Nick. And I would like you guys to please excuse my outfit for today. It is Halloween, as of course you know, and I'm going back as a throwback warrior, so just excuse that. And we got a special guest on the show today. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. My name is Nick Sciria. I'm a senior finance major from for B-Ball Breakdown, which is basically an NBA site, and I use stats and film to help out my arguments.
Yeah, I'm sure most of the people viewing here know what B-Ball Breakdown is. Really great site for all NBA. I know for one.
Great
Me for
YouTube
one.
channel
Always
too.
go on it. Yeah, it's awesome. So
I really like how B-Ball Breakdown breaks down actual game film.
Exactly.
Also uses analytics on
I know
some other bigger websites that kind of don't go as detailed. So really happy to have him on the show. Nick, do you want to take the first question or you want me?
Yeah, you can take it. I know you're excited for this one.
Okay, so the first thing, this has been a debate we've been having on the show, and your win totals completely disagree with my theory that the East is barely better than the West this year. I know your win totals are way in favor of the West. Can you tell me why?
Yeah, I think in the West, I think the second tier is a lot better than in the East. Obviously, in the East and the West, there's top three teams are pretty solidified in both conferences. But when you go down and in the West, you got teams like Utah and Portland. I'm a lot higher on those teams than when you go to the East, and there's teams like Indiana who I'm not so high on, and maybe teams like Atlanta or Washington. So I would just say the second tier is probably the big difference maker for me.
That's actually really interesting because our arguments, at least because I'm on the West Side too, I'm with you, Nick. But, we had Chris Axman on the show. I've been asking, we had three Syracuse sports managers, they're majoring in sports management, and we all say West, but for me it's been a different reason. It's the top tier, the top talent, you have the Warriors, Spurs, and Clippers, who I think all could beat the Cavs possibly.
And you also mentioned the All-Star game. You
Yeah,
have so much talent, like Davis,
not necessarily
Cousins.
just the All-Star game, but just the amount of talent, in the West is different, But I thought that the average teams in the East don't really compare to the top teams of the West. But that's interesting that he's saying that the more average teams are better in the East. So, Mike, do you got anything to say about that? Really?
His win totals do back it up. I don't see how you have the Pacers so low.
Yeah.
Any reasoning behind that? I'm also low on Washington, like you are.
Yeah. So Indiana, I have an article coming out soon, but basically I think George Hill is really good and really underrated, and I think that trading him and getting Jeff Teague was actually just kind of like a lateral move and didn't actually make them better. One, because Jeff Teague really doesn't fit as well as George Hill did with the Pacers. They have a ball-dominant two-guard in Monte Ellis, and they also obviously have Paul George. So really having that off-ball point guard like George Hill who can make plays when he needs to, but is more of a guy who can just spot up and space out the floor, probably fit better with what they needed to do. And right now, they don't have much shooting. Jeff Teague had an outlier season last year. He shot 40% from three, but before that, he was a 33% shooter. So we're kind of expecting that to go back down, which it has to start the season. So just the shooting, you have Miles Turner, who he can hit from mid-range, but hasn't shown a three-point shot yet. Thad Young, obviously not a shooter. So really, Paul George is the only guy in the starting lineup who can knock down threes. And I think they needed George Hill to help them out there.
Yeah, I really like that. You really need to give Paul George the ball, and with that ball-dominant point guard, obviously, that doesn't work out. Also, Miles Turner is growing into someone that you maybe need to get touches more. But Mike, what do you think about the Indiana thing? I know you've been really high on them. That's one of your reasons why you thought the East was going to be better than the West this year.
I have been really high on Indiana. I think that Paul George is probably a top 10 player in the NBA. I also really like Miles Turner. I think he's going to come into his own in his second season in the NBA. I also thought that Thaddeus Young move was really underrated and that he's going to fit in well with the Pacers. But we'll see. We disagree. Nick, what's your next question for him?
I wanted to know your B-ball breakdowns, obviously heavy numbers. heavy analytics. I want to know how much you actually, obviously it affects the game, but can you accurately, is it more right than wrong, or like, because there's like always that variable about like the human factor, or like sports. I think like I can't be completely determined by analytics. Like, what is your experience with predicting games, like stuff like that, stuff predicting seasons? Has analytics worked out more than it hasn't really?
Well, I think the big thing with analytics, and a lot of people are obviously against them, but I think the big thing is just knowing exactly what you're looking at and being able to use video to back those analytics up. Like, for me, there are a lot of like PER and VORP, and people think that there's just like someone might have a higher VORP than a player, and people just think that's like the end all, which is totally not.
Right.
And it's not even meant out to be that way. So like, just sometimes for analytics, for me, it's just looking at a certain number and just bringing that up and saying, oh wow, like I wouldn't expect that. Let me go watch the film and see what I can find and see how that backs up that number, instead of just saying, oh, that's the number and that's it. So really, for me, it's just more of a starting point rather than an ending point. It helps me figure out what I need to watch more, and it helps me clue in on exactly what to watch.
Is there anything that you've noticed that your analytics are telling you that game film isn't? Like anything you really disagree with your numbers?
Well, I would say that like people use defensive rating a lot. Like Hassan Whiteside's defensive rating is like the Heat were better, I think, with Hassan Whiteside off the floor in terms of defensive rating. But that's another one where there's a lot of noise and there's a lot of other factors that are going into that number. It's not just Hassan Whiteside is obviously a good defender. He may be a bit overrated because he likes to chase blocks a little, but he's still a good defender and he helps the Heat. And so like looking at that number and just saying, oh, like defensive rating, like the Heat are better with him off the floor is a little misleading.
Right.
You got anything right now?
Yeah, I'm thinking. Obviously, we're Cavs fans, and I was
from
wondering.
Cleveland.
Yeah, from Cleveland. I was actually wanted to like switch topics here too. What do you think? The Cavs team is like looking really like chemistry right now, but do you think that it's like a bad matchup for the Warriors because there's no one really that can for the finals, upcoming finals, everyone's thinking it's going to be a rematch, Cavs Warriors Part 3. Do you think we saw the Spurs opening the opening game just dominate the Warriors inside? That's what I think. They were just able to expose that Zaza Pachulia matchup. Do you think the Cavs could do that really, or like, what do you think about that really?
So Zaza can be exposed in the pick and roll, especially.
Yeah.
And you have guys like Kyrie and LeBron who can obviously play in the pick and roll with JR spotting up, and obviously guys like Kevin Love and Tristan Thompson as well who can set the screen and roll or pop in Kevin Love's fashion.
Yeah.
So I could definitely see the Cavs and a lot of other teams trying to get Zaza off the floor. The problem is when they do, then the Warriors can just go small and plug in that depth lineup, which is pretty hard to beat.
Yeah, you're basically replacing Harrison Barnes for Kevin Durant. That's been said a lot. And speaking on that Warriors team, well, I just had to get that Cavs point, but like a broader term, where do you think the Warriors are going to do this regular season? Like, how well do you think was the beginning of the year? I mean, they've been 2-1 now, but they struggled
with the Suns.
They struggled with the Suns. They've been struggling with these teams that you would think they would have to put away. They lost to the Spurs. What do you think is happening to the Warriors? Is it similar to the Heat, their first year with LeBron, or is it like a bigger issue, really?
I think it's just kind of the same things we saw with the Heat when they started off 9-8. Just typical trying to figure out, like we saw last night, Draymond looks really hesitant. He doesn't really know if he should look for his own shot or if he should be looking for shots for others.
Right.
So I just think it's things they just need to go through. And you're going to see it with every team that brings on a guy like Kevin Durant. Is just,
right.
And I mean, there's just a lot of hesitancy right now going around, but I think they'll figure it out.
Okay, I have a question. How do your season win totals analytics factor in chemistry?
So I have like two approaches where the wins projections. One approach is the analytical model. The other approach is just my eye test and looking at the roster and seeing what I think about it. So that eye test would take into account chemistry issues and maybe a slow start for the Warriors, which I actually did put into play, and they still wound up with like 68 wins. But And as we saw last night, they'll still be able to, even if they struggle, they're still better than most teams. Even if they're struggling, they can still pull out wins at the end like they did last night against the Suns.
Yeah, and you mentioned that Zaza got exposed in the pick and roll. Your defensive ratings has Draymond as a much better defender at the center position than the power forward position, and also LeBron as a much better defender for power forward and small forward. Do you think that will be the lineups the team will go with if they do meet in the finals?
Yeah, I would expect that if they do meet in the finals, like we saw 2 years ago when the Warriors won, Steve Kerr just totally benched Bogut in like game 4 or 5 of that series, and yeah, you can definitely expect Draymond to play a lot of center if we do get to the finals, and that's the matchup. Draymond can be expected to play a lot at the small ball 5.
So these like present stars, these present like the Golden State Cavs, they're all doing like really well right now. They're going to their own. But I've been really interested, especially opening week where we saw Miles Turner, Anthony Davis, Kawhi, all these young players showing out. I've been interested in what do you think the future of the NBA is going? Like where do you think it's headed? Do you think that it's just going to be? I have an actual particular theory, but I want to hear your thoughts first on like the future of the NBA. Where do you think these stars are going to be headed in their future, really?
I mean, there's so many stars right now, and there's so
awesome.
many up and coming players. It's so fun to watch. Like Karl Anthony Towns, and he's so young and he's so good. And every time I watch him, he looks like a 10-year veteran. Like D'Angelo Russell, even a guy like Rodney Hood, who a lot of people don't watch because he plays in Utah, but he's only like 22 or 23. So there's so many guys. Jokic is another guy who a lot of people don't know about, but he's really good. So the plethora of talent is just unbelievable right now in the NBA, especially young talent.
Yeah, so speaking on what I was saying, I'm going to pull up a list here. We had a show, we had our last week's show on the NBA, and we highlighted all these young players, and this was opening weekend, so this is all 26 and under who showed out on the opening weekend. You have Anthony Davis with obviously his monster game of 50 points, 16 rebounds, 5 assists, goes on. Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Kyrie Irving, Miles Turner, Giannis, Karl Towns, Embiid, D'Angelo Russell, and Kawhi. And what I've noticed, you could either throw in Jokic there, is the big men now. Like there are huge like amounts of big men, generational players, not like of old. I don't think it's going to go back to the David Robinsons, Shaqs, like the big rough and tough type people, but I think it's going to be, you're going to see a trend in the NBA where the 4 and 5 are going to be like much more featured in the NBA. Like I think it's not going to be as guard heavy you're seeing with the Warriors now. I actually think that it's going to go back to being at least like the 5 and 4 positions are going to be a lot more featured. What do you think about that?
That's an interesting point. Obviously, most of those guys you mentioned who are bigs are so versatile.
Yeah, that's a thing.
And they're just able to take on, more playmaking roles like Karl Anthony Towns or Anthony Davis, where you can just throw them the ball on the perimeter and they can dribble and make plays and shoot off the dribble and make insane passes. So, like, I could definitely see that happening.
Yeah, it's crazy to watch. The NBA is awesome. And last point about the future of the NBA. Obviously, great things are happening in Cleveland right now. We're from Cleveland. Watching the Indians has been awesome. Playoff baseball is way better than regular season baseball. But there's still the fact that it's just an old sport. It's really boring. It's like slow. And not many people in Cleveland, even though they're hyped about the Indians, will watch next year regular season. Same thing with NFL this year. Ratings have been down, maybe for various reasons. But the fact is that the NBA right now is at the height of excitement, at its peak. Where do you see America's favorite sport to watch maybe 5 years, 10 years down the line? Do you think the NBA could sneak in there at the number one sport that people watch and enjoy?
Yeah, I do. You're right about the NFL ratings being down, and then with all of this talent that we just talked about, I could definitely see it.
That'd be awesome. I'm an NBA fan. I'm sorry. Like, we cover everything, but just the NBA is just something special to me. Really.
Yeah, we've also got a good amount of guests for the NBA, including him, Chris Axman, also NVers. So we've had a lot of good guests for the NBA. Something I want to speak about. You did a lot of stuff on the Timberwolves, and Andrew Wiggins' thread was how I actually found you on Twitter. And I want to talk to you about, in their preseason numbers, I want to say that their mid-range jump shot selection has gone down a lot. Do you think that's coaching or just better offense?
It's definitely coaching. Last year, the Timberwolves had a guy coaching Sam Mitchell, who is no longer the coach. It's now Tom Thibodeau, obviously. But the big thing is that last year the Timberwolves did not embrace analytics at all. So you saw Andrew Wiggins and a lot of other guys taking long 2-pointers when they easily could have been 3-pointers. I think Towns only shot like 80 3-pointers the whole season last year. So making some of those mid-range shots 3-pointers is definitely going to help pick up their offensive efficiency, and you can already see it happening with their shot selection.
Yeah, I'm higher on the Timberwolves this year than most are. I really like their team and how they gel. I know you're very high on Ricky Rubio as well. But then you have something, Nick?
Yeah, I'm interested to the MVP discussion. Has been really talked about in all these websites, Bleacher Report, everything. Everyone we've interviewed have been high on one particular guy. Mostly they're different guys because there's so many guys you can pick. But I'm interested to hear from a really analytics expert. Who is your MVP pick for this year?
My pick was Kawhi Leonard.
Okay.
He obviously, we know how good he is defensively, but offensively we can already see it. The jumps he's making from year to year is unbelievable. This year he's just totally taking on the playmaker role.
Okay.
And he's dribbling and playmaking for others more than we've ever seen. Last year he took a huge step in his dribbling and handling of the ball, and his efficiency is off the charts as well. So that was my pick.
Yeah, I did not agree with anyone we had the show with the Kawhi pick. I just was scared with him because he never has had a game over 40 points. I think his career high was 34. But now he's coming in the season. He's scoring in bunches, and he's still playing as tight of defense as he can. So I can still see it. I'm still homeboy with LeBron. I also like Westbrook. I don't trust in Davis, though, because he's going to miss 20 games, I think.
He's going to miss the playoffs,
yeah.
too.
So, but... yeah, that's what I had for the MVP. Mike, do you got anything?
Yeah, I thought Damian Lillard should have been second last year behind Steph Curry. I liked him again this preseason. He's proven me right. You had a ton of game film around the Trailblazers and Utah Jazz game. Can you speak about how Rudy Gobert guarded the pick and roll, and if they met in a playoff series, how they would switch handling the high pick and roll action that the Trailblazers ran?
Yeah, so for most of the pick and rolls that were ran, and they run really high pick and rolls that are pretty close to half court, so it makes it really hard for a 7-footer to get out there. For most of the pick and rolls, Rudy Gobert was in the lane, and it just allowed Damian Lillard just to come off the screen and shoot the three. I think that Derek Favors being out for that one is a huge factor in that. For one, I think they probably wouldn't have played Gobert as much because it wasn't a particularly good matchup, and they probably would have played Favors, who can definitely get out there, and he's a lot more mobile. And number two is, if Favors is playing and they're playing both together, maybe Gobert is a little more confident in getting out to the three-point line, knowing that Favors is behind him and can have his back, because Favors is a really good defender as well.
Yeah, I like the Trailblazers more than the Jazz preseason, but even though the Trailblazers won, I raised some concerns about that game just instantly.
I was wondering because we had Chris Axon on the show, and he's a big Dallas Mavericks homeboy. He really likes the Dallas Mavericks. And I was wondering if you had a horse in the race this NBA season. It's always fun to talk about someone that we're interviewing his team and what we think about them. So, do you have a horse in the race this NBA season?
My horse in the race this season is probably the Jazz.
Really?
I was kind of on the hype train before it was cool to be on the hype train, at the beginning of the summer.
Yeah.
And then now NBA Twitter is all over the Jazz.
Yeah.
And it's one of the. So now I'm a little afraid because I don't want to start a letdown here. But they just have so many guys, and when Hayward comes back and their depth, and I really like a lot of their players, especially George Hill, like I talked about.
Yeah.
So I could see them, I have them as a 4 seed, but I think they could do some damage.
Yeah, I really like how that team is constructed. They just really need a break. I feel like that Western Conference.
Any one of them becomes a star, they're set because they have 10 deep on the bench that they can go through.
Wasn't Hornacek coaching that team before he's coaching the Knicks? Didn't he get fired from? Or no, was that the Suns? That was the Suns.
Suns.
Yeah. He played for the Jazz most.
Yes.
Yeah, he did play for the Jets. You're right.
Nick, you're getting all confused here.
Yeah, I know. No, I just really like Hornacek, and I was just I knew he was coaching for a Western Conference team, and when the Suns fired him, I was really upset. But I was about to just get mad at the Utah, but who's the coach for Utah?
Quinn Snyder.
Quinn Snyder.
Yeah, Chris Axman was hating on Quinn Snyder on saying that he's not a good enough offensive coach.
Yeah.
But I've got something. So part of your week 1 risers, you had Wade Baldwin, a guy from Vanderbilt. I was a huge Vanderbilt fan, and I got frustrated with him a lot throughout the year, watching a lot of his games, and even his freshman year too. He was just a really frustrating player to watch. How do you think he's going to fit in with the Memphis Grizzlies?
So he's a guy who I didn't watch at all in college, but there were a lot of draft guys who were high on him, and he went a little lower than expected. So he has really been everything that people wanted. He's really long. He's generating a lot of steals, and he's been able to play off the ball or on the ball. They've played a lot of Mike Conley, Wade Baldwin lineups where he's playing more off the ball, but he's also been able to play on the ball as well and get into the lane and make some plays. So far so good for Wade Baldwin.
Yeah, he's just so long and athletic, and he just should have been so much better. I still have bad memories watching him. But Nick, what do you have?
Yeah, since I'm so high on these future NBA players, I obviously want them to be protected. And this is a topic that I've just been really mad about over the past week. New Orleans team, how the ownership has constructed this team around Anthony Davis, just a bunch of scrubs. You have Buddy Hield on your week 1 fallers, and I agree with that. Obviously, they have just no one around Davis. What do you think this is going to do? Well, first I wanted you to talk on that team and what you think about it, and then how do you think this is going to impact Davis's career potentially for his whole career, really?
Yeah, so one of the things is that Drew Holiday is obviously out, and he can definitely help out Davis. He's actually a pretty quality point guard that a lot of people forget about because he has injury concerns, but when he gets back, that'll be helpful for Davis. And this whole New Orleans Pelicans roster construction nightmare started with giving Ashik way more money than he should have ever been given, especially next to Anthony Davis. It never made sense. So I think from there it's all been downhill. But obviously we see Anthony Davis, he's still able to put up crazy numbers, and 2 years ago they were in the playoffs as the 8th seed. So, I mean, it still doesn't surprise me what Anthony Davis can do despite the lack of talent on his team.
Yeah, 50 points in a loss. That just had me just so mad.
And then he had 40 the other night too.
Considering how injury prone he is too, him carrying the team like that, I was just praying for the Pelicans.
You were high on Davis, and I wasn't as high as you were.
I just didn't like how Towns was just getting so much credit after everyone would love Davis in the beginning of the year. And he gets injured, but he's still a generational talent. I think he's a one-in-a-kind unicorn. Towns is there can be other players like him, but obviously he's really good. But again, I was like, the Pelicans, please just trade Davis, just somehow get him out of that bad situation.
Well, what's his? Do you know his contract situation off the top of your head?
Yeah, he signed a max deal last season extension. So it was 5 years. So he'll be there for a while.
No. I don't want him to not.
I was hoping you were going to be like, oh, yeah, his contract comes out next summer. He's good.
I don't want him to be
Stuck
tied down
in New Orleans.
I want him to be a historic, one of the best. I don't know. I just like Davis. I'm a Kentucky guy. Sorry about my co-host, too, asking about Wade Baldwin. He's a Vanderbilt guy. We're in Northeast Ohio, but he likes Vanderbilt. I don't know why, but we always just talk about it.
I was actually gonna dress up as a clown by wearing a Vanderbilt football jersey today.
Hey, they're not doing too bad, but do we got any more NBA questions for?
But yeah, you have to take into consideration the small sample size that we have been given this year. You saw the 3-point statistics that you posted. Chicago was 6th and Golden State was 26th. That's
what?
Yeah, because Dwayne Wade shot 4 for 6 from 3.
That was nuts.
And Rondo was hitting shots. So yeah, you have to always take into consideration small sample sizes at this point of the year when you look at analytics.
Yeah, analytics. There's always those factors. I mean, I know that you know that, but some people always get mad about, like, there's, like, so many factors about, like, goes into it. But one last thing, you talked about the people hating on analytics in the beginning of the show. Do you ever receive, like, just haters on analytics that you have to, like, talk to about and stuff? Like, I feel like that there will be those people like that will just try to, like, discount analytics.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of people in my mentions who don't necessarily like analytics that much, but it's really just about teaching them what analytics actually is and what it's meant out to be. And I think people who don't like analytics don't understand them. And that's the big thing, is that they need to start understanding them, and then I don't think they'd be as against it as they are.
Yeah, like what you said in the beginning of the show, you have to apply it. You can't just
take it with a grain of salt.
Exactly. Well, just like learn how to apply it. That was really good. But other than that, I got one last thing.
So yeah, another analytics guy. Obviously, we had Ed Fang on the show for college football, and I really think that just sports fans in general should use more analytics. They shouldn't go crazy with it, but I do think that an increase in analytics would be good for the media. And do you have any questions for us before we wrap it up?
Okay, I have one. I'm actually from Northeast Ohio too.
Oh, okay.
So I'm from Mayfield. What do you think, if you had to pinpoint a weakness for the Cavs this year, what do you think it would be?
I honestly think that's a good question. You have it?
I think mine's an obvious one.
Okay.
Backup point guard.
Yeah.
Pretty obvious one. So, I mean, I'm not the Cavs fan that you are, so I'm sure you have you watch a lot more Cavs and a lot more NBA than me, so I'm sure you can come up with a better one.
Yeah, I honestly think, even though Kevin Love did so good, this is going to be like an obvious one.
I have another one.
I think it's not going to be Kevin Love will hit the threes. I just think that he's never fit with them. Like, they won a championship together. That was LeBron going ham, Kyrie going ham. Kyrie's going to develop into that Allen Iverson type two guard. I feel like he's more of a two guard. LeBron's going to be the point guard. I think backup point guard, I think Kay Felder is going to surprise a lot of people.
You really like Kay Felder.
I really like Kay Felder. Everything he does. He doesn't look as small, but we're going to get that to another day.
I got new things.
I think Love, there were rumors about a DeMarcus Cousins to Kevin Love trade. Obviously, he didn't think that was going to happen. Kings won't do that, but I honestly think Kevin Love just never fits. He's not the Cavs are predicated on athleticism. You see that throughout the whole roster, really. Tristan Thompson, athletic freak, but I think Kevin Love will end up being just never meshing there, never working out. Will be the thorn in the side for the Cavs. And that's only because he's not a good matchup against the Warriors. That's the only reason why I say that, because that's the only competition you really have to think of
and the Spurs,
when it comes.
Really.
Well, the Spurs, yeah, but I think it's just going to be Warriors, Cavs at the end of the day. But Mike, what do you have?
I came up with a new one. I can't believe that I forgot this. I've been saying this for about 5 years now, that if LeBron ever got back, so this was before LeBron came back, that you need to build LeBron around the power forward position and not the small forward position. I think the Cavs built around him at the small forward position. That was a mistake. Your analytics backed me up, saying that he's a much better defender at the 4. I said from 2012 or 2011 even that at the end of LeBron's career, once he gets to 32, he needs to play power forward, and I don't think the Cavs have built around LeBron the power forward.
I think I want to disagree with you. Because, yes, they might have developed a starting lineup as that, but they built that roster to be LeBron can play with any of these guys. Channing Frye, he can play anywhere he wants. He can be the point guard, he can be 1 through 5, coming off the bench or whatever. Or like anyone coming off the bench, he can play well with. So I do think the Cavs are going to be all right. That Kevin Love thing won't. I still think that they can win the championship. But I would like to hear what you have to say, because knowing how much of an NBA fan you are, I want to hear what you think the Cavs' biggest weakness is.
I think one thing that didn't come up is rim protection.
Yeah.
So Mozgov wasn't great last year, but the year before he was awesome. And then he had knee injuries, and he's still not the same. But providing that rim protection so that perimeter guys can play a little more aggressively on the outside, knowing that they have someone behind them that could deter shots at the rim, is a huge, huge advantage in today's NBA. And it's something that I think the Cavs really don't have. So that would probably be my pick.
Yeah, all three of those are weaknesses for the Cavs. Not to say though that any of these other teams that they're going to be going
have
up
less weaknesses.
like everyone. I feel like this is a really exciting NBA. There's more parity than people think. Everyone thinks it's going to be a Cavs Warriors, but I mean, some stuff, crazy stuff has happened. But now I think that is going to wrap up our show, our interview with Nick. Thank you very much for coming on the show, Nick. And this has been an awesome episode of FHS Season Tickets. Thank you very much.
Yeah, no problem. I had fun.
Yeah,
Yeah, we had fun too.